Anna Bauer, the senior editor at Lawfare, put this together. So the Trump administration is claiming it wasn't a mistake now, and we'll get to that clip in a second.
Particularly Stephen Miller.
Right, who is kind of, it seems like the president right now.
Also a Nazi.
Yep. They're claiming that it wasn't a mistake in public to the press, but the DOJ lawyers said something very different at the time. Here is this first slide, the Solicitor General under Donald Trump. While the United States concedes that the removal to El Salvador was an administrative error, that does not license district courts to seize control over foreign relations. That was what was said in that document by the Solicitor General. Now let's go here to the second slide. Another admission of an administrative error by an ICE official, Robert Cerna. The quote is, "Through administrative error, Abrego Garcia was removed from the United States to El Salvador. This was an oversight, and the removal was carried out in good faith based on the existence of a final order of removal and Abrego Garcia's purported membership in MS-13.
People that operate in good faith don't have to insist on their good faith.
Yeah.
ICE and all these detention authorities are goon squads that get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to just make mistakes like this. And there's many of them.
How do you remove somebody from the United States in good faith? Oh, well, we didn't.
Look, we thought that we got very scared of the tattoo and put him on a bus and shipped him to. I mean, it's a lie. It's a joke. It's an insult to everyone's intelligence. Anyone who buys this is I got a bridge to sell you.
But they get off on the lying. And they know that they can't make the claims they're making in public in court. So they have to be a little bit more honest here. They'll say good faith, but the admission is the most important part. This is a third piece of evidence from the Department of Justice lawyer, Erez Ruveni, in court filings and at a hearing. We concede he should not have been removed to El Salvador. This is when they have to put pen to paper and when they're in court. But now let's turn to what they're saying to the cameras. So this is the new tactic, right? The Supreme Court said that the Trump administration needs to be facilitating Abrego Garcia's release, and effectuating is the other word. The Department of Justice claimed in a filing on Sunday, I guess it was at this point, that they don't see that as having to bring him back to the United States, that they're only liable for him having to come back once he's freed from this El Salvador prison. But Bukele is saying, even though he's acting as a United States contractor, that he's not going to do that. So with all of this in mind, let's play this full exchange from yesterday, because it all kicked off with this question from Caitlin Collins of CNN. And you see Trump call on the rest of the class to give their answers on this obviously illegal fascist action. And there's some contradictions even in this short time frame of these idiots communicating to us.
Do you plan to
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CBS.
Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
Okay, pause it for a sec.
And
You are doing a great job. So you hear that, right? First of all, she falsely claims that Abrego Garcia was an MS-13 member. The reality is that he was arrested by ICE in 2019 as he was looking for day labor at a Home Depot in Maryland. there was an informant that said he may be an MS-13 member, and so immigration judges denied him bond initially.
Informants, I just want to say, not the best people. Not the best people, those informants. They'll just say things.
And that bore out in the fact that his bond, yes, it was initially denied because of that informant claim, but he then later received in immigration protection, which is entitled withholding of removal. And it was determined where they granted that withholding of removal that he was not a danger to U.S. national security. Now, you also hear Pam Bondi say that this is foreign policy. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but this is a way to remove people's rights, because since the war on terror and the Trump administration 2.0 is building off of the unitary executive theory that was furthered and begun, really, I guess, or formally begun under the Bush administration in the Iraq War, it's about giving the president basically, broad authority here, and removing it from the confines of the Constitution when it constitutes foreign policy. So because this involves the El Salvador government, which took these individuals as functioning as a contractor for the United States, they are claiming that this is foreign policy and then also classifying immigrants as terrorists, so they feel like it's easier to remove their rights. But keep going.
Great job. Thank you. Wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant. Because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here.
Oh, okay. Kidnapping. No, you guys did the kidnapping and sent him there. This would be returning him to his family. And it's interesting he uses that language, because later we'll play Martin O'Malley, who is suggesting something that I think is really a policy that the Democratic attorneys general should pursue, that they should file kidnapping charges against the administration. So I find it interesting.
That's exactly why he's doing that.
Yeah, that's why he's using that language. Keep going.
Court. And the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to ask for it to get him back?
And what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0.
In our favor.
In our favor, against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time. No version of this really ends up with him ever living here, because...
Just to underline, the guy who could make that decision is sitting right next to Trump, grinning and saying, it's out of my hands too.
Oh, don't you worry. They'll ask him that question.
He is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked. Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to have suggested that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's already said.
How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or whether, of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean,
Smuggle him?
The question is preposterous. How can I
a fucking joke.
smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world to the safest country in the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick, these are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Island, I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way.
All right,
that's the top diplomat of the country, Marco Rubio, who, I mean, how did his people get to this country? Saying that, yeah, I guess we don't have to follow any court rulings.
I don't understand.
And this is our foreign policy to send innocent people into gulags.
I don't understand what the confusion is. Well, here, let me just take a crack at this, Marco. That clip was around 5 minutes long. It opened with Trump calling on Pam, his favorite student, who said that it's up to El Salvador if they want to return Garcia. It's not up to the United States. Then the press asked Bukele, the president of El Salvador, who says, I don't have the power to return him to the United States. That would be smuggling. So then Rubio says, I don't understand the confusion. You don't? You don't understand the confusion? Because it seems like the confusion is the purpose. And it's in complete contrast to what they're claiming in court. Stephen Miller keeps saying it's a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. That's not what the Department of Justice is saying. Also, the judge said when it was ruled under the withholding of removal for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that they could not send him back to El Salvador because of his asylum claim. Because there are asylum laws that are supposed to protect people from political violence. The judge that issued the withholding of removal put that in the ruling. So they could have deported him to other countries. They could have been just as cruel, but not just as cruel, almost as cruel. They could have been in the 99th percentile of cruelty, but they wanted to go over the top to send him to an abusive gulag. So no, there is a process, and they could have petitioned to revoke the withholding of removal, but they didn't do that, and they violated it twice. One, by deporting him, and then secondly, and without going through that petition process, and then secondly, by deporting him to the one country that the judge who granted that for him said he couldn't be sent to because of safety concerns.
And I'd also just underline Abrego Garcia's safety is, and it's great to see representatives threatening to go down to El Salvador to secure him, because his safety cannot be assured. He could be murdered in this system. Bukele has a history of cutting deals with gangs. It's actually how did this happen where they, got these gangs together? Well, they're mass incarceration, which has been on for a while, and it's very expensive and probably not long for this world. But prior to that, Bukele was cutting deals with these gangs. I am worried that these gang facilities, like if somebody that was in this country because they were avoiding gangs goes into that prison, how can
we don't know if he's alive. Exactly.
Bukele says he calls him a terrorist. I'm sorry. The worst has to be the worst is on the table right now.
That is definitely in the realm of possibility that's part of why they're fighting so hard. I mean, I also think they're fighting so hard because it's just that's what fascists do, because they're both.
They can't have him come back and testify. Exactly.
I mean, this is what I love the fascist playbook. They're both so powerful and strong, but also so weak and powerless. There's nothing
Yep.
Bukele can do to release Garcia. There's nothing Trump can do to release Garcia. There's nothing Pam Bondi can do to release Garcia. There's nothing Marco Rubio can do to release Garcia. There's nothing Stephen Miller can do to release Garcia. But we're also strong men, and we're alphas, and we're the powerful.
Yep.
But also victims, constantly victims.
And also very scared, seen terrorists everywhere. They're under your bed.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.